Hey all, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. It's always great to have fresh faces in our little community. Grab a coffee, sit back, and let's dive into something pretty important that's making waves in US politics right now. So, Senator Chris Murphy recently went on ABC's This Week and made a pretty bold statement. He said we're living through one of the most dangerous moments America has ever faced. That's a heavy claim, right? According to Murphy, former President Donald Trump is using the power of the federal government not just to govern, but to punish his political opponents. Basically, he's saying Trump is weaponizing presidential power in a way that threatens the foundation of American democracy. Now, let's pause here for a second. Do you think that's true? Do you believe political leaders, past or present, have used their power to go after critics? Or do you think that's just politics as usual? Maybe exaggerated a little for effect? Murphy points to some pretty specific examples. He says regulatory agencies like the FCC are being used to pressure media companies. Instead of media outlets making independent decisions, he claims they're being nudged or even forced into silencing certain voices. That's a big deal because if the government can push media companies to control speech, doesn't that chip away at the freedom of the press? He also raised alarms about the legal system being influenced. For instance, he talked about the firing of a U.S. attorney in Virginia who, after not finding any wrongdoing by a Democratic official, was suddenly out of a job. Murphy sees that as part of a pattern where independent voices inside government get replaced with political loyalists. Think about that. If prosecutors or attorneys are making decisions based on loyalty to a politician instead of the law, what does that mean for justice? Would you still trust the system? And then there's the issue of free speech and protest rights. Murphy warns that dissent itself could be punished. He drew comparisons to countries like China, Iran, or Cuba, where speaking out against the government can land you in jail or take you off the air. Now, hearing that, you might think, okay, but America isn't like that, right? But Murphy's argument is that we shouldn't wait until it gets that extreme. If we see even the smallest moves in that direction, it's worth paying attention. Do you agree with that line of thinking, or do you think it's alarmist? Now, to be fair, not everyone buys into Murphy's warnings. Supporters of Trump, and even some neutral voices, argue that this is just politics. Presidents have always used influence to push for certain outcomes. They'd say persuasion is not the same thing as coercion. And to them, Murphy is framing normal political behavior as something sinister. So the question becomes, where do we draw the line between persuasion, which is part of politics, and coercion, which can be illegal? Murphy is trying to address this through legislation. He's introduced something called the No Political Enemies Act. The idea is to create stronger protections for people who believe they're being targeted for political reasons, making it easier for them to fight back in court by pointing to the First Amendment. Now, whether that would pass or even work in practice is another story, but it does show that he's not just complaining, he's trying to put some guardrails in place. He also had a pretty direct message for Republicans. He asked, when is enough enough? Basically saying, at what point do members of Trump's own party step in and say, okay, this isn't acceptable? And that raises another interesting question for us. Do you think party loyalty sometimes gets in the way of protecting democratic norms? Or is it unfair to expect politicians to break with their own party unless things are absolutely extreme? When you zoom out, this whole debate really comes down to trust. Do we trust that institutions like the Department of Justice, the FCC, and the courts are acting independently? Or do we believe they're being steered by politics? And honestly, that's not just about Trump or Murphy, it's about how we, as citizens, see our democracy functioning. If people start believing the system itself is rigged, what happens to public trust? And if trust erodes, how do we rebuild it? So, here's the big picture. Senator Murphy is sounding the alarm about what he sees as a dangerous moment for American democracy. Trump's camp and others argue it's overblown or simply part of the rough-and-tumble world of politics. And we're left to wrestle with the hard questions. Is this really a constitutional crisis, or is it politics as usual? How much power should a president have to push back against critics? And maybe most importantly, what role should we, the public, play in holding leaders accountable? That's where I want to leave it today, because I'd love to hear what you think. Do you believe Murphy's concerns are valid, or do you think this is political theater? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I read through them and love hearing your perspectives. And hey, if you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. Share this with a friend who loves discussing politics, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.